So the next Sony, PlayStation, the next Xbox, and I would say even the next Nintendo systems are going to be boring. So why do I say that? Well, I've grown up with game systems ever since the days of Atari, and I kind of feel having a new release of a game system like this Dreamcast right here is just not exciting anymore, especially in the days of the internet age where honestly, being able to play a game, it's not difficult anymore. You don't need a game system. And unlike the old days where you didn't have the internet, you didn't know what these game systems were going to be capable of. All you could do was wait for the game magazines to see the pictures of graphics, of games, the hardware, and that gets you so excited and pumped. And then whenever it would be released, you would have to wait for typically hours and hours in line, depending upon the availability and also depending upon where you lived. And you would see a huge jump. It was such a big thing to go from 8-bit, 16-bit, 32-bit, 64-bit, 128 bits. Those actually meant something back in the days because you actually did see a huge leap in graphics. And in terms of sound, I think sound has been really great for a long time, but you also saw a huge jump as well as you moved up in the different generation of games. And then another thing that was really important is since you didn't really have the internet, at least in the earlier days of gaming systems, you didn't know much about it. You know, you just couldn't find out about things before they were released unless you actually worked in the industry. So that gave you even more excitement and mystery surrounding that. Nowadays, everything is going to be released or leaked at some point, whether intentionally or not. So there's not as much excitement there. And then the other thing is the whole gaming landscape has changed. Obviously, most of us game digitally now. Even when we buy a physical game, you might just get a download code. And so you don't have the same attachment to a game system like you did before, even though companies like Nintendo and Sony and Microsoft, they still have some exclusives. But for the most part, if you wanted to play a particular game, especially one that is popular, it's probably going to be available on every single system and be available digitally, so you don't have to wait. And then another thing that I think people who maybe have not tried older game systems or didn't grow up with it is the whole physical part of it. I know we have our physical game system still, but once again, a lot of things are being done digitally. And before, whenever you got the game, that was it. You're not going to get additional patches or releases. You would get the game as is when it was released. And for the most part, those games were done and complete. But nowadays, you get a game that's released, it's most of the times not done yet. It's basically in beta mode, and then you are testing the game until they release more patches and fixes. Which leads to the other thing, is all these updates, these huge software updates, and even if you have the physical game, there's going to be updates that you're going to have to download onto your system before you even play the game. And this is just absolutely mind-blowing to me that that is where we're at today. For some games, they're like 70, 100 plus gigs. And if you have a slow internet, you're going to have to wait a while. Whereas back in the day, whenever you went to go buy a game system, you bought the games, you put it in, and you're ready to play. I really miss those days of having fully playable games and not having to download patches, updates, all these other things, which also leads to this whole question of privacy. Because of the internet age and because these companies have so much information on you, I always feel like somebody's watching me as I'm playing a game. Plus, they're thinking of ways to market to me and sell me more stuff, let alone having control of the access to the games that I quote unquote own. And a good example of this is something like games like Doom, right? I actually have to have an account to log in to play this game, which I bought. And I absolutely hate that. And I know some of those things existed back in the day, but it wasn't as prevalent as it is today. And at the same time, they're doing so much data collection and mining. So your privacy is something that you practically have to give up. You don't have a choice. And then the final thing I would say is just the overall excitement. You know, all these things together with having a new game system like this one right here, the Sega Dreamcast. I can't tell you how excited I was about this. And this was something that was built up over the years because, once again, we didn't have the internet back then. And if we did have it, it wasn't to the extent that it was today. So there was always some excitement, always some feeling of wanting to have this system. I would dream about having this. I would save up my money. I would do all types of jobs. I would sell my old stuff just so that I could get this new system. And I still have the box today, and it still gives me that sense of joy that I remembered when I was a kid. Whereas nowadays, I really don't have that. And maybe that's due to my age, due to the time that I grew up with, but I really miss that overall excitement, fun, magic, and wonder of having a brand new system. So if you actually had any thoughts on this or any of your own stories and experiences with your game systems, be sure to leave in the comments area below, and I'll see you on another episode.